Thank you, everyone, for listening to Soul Talk with host Jeremy McDonald, the author of Peace Be Still. You can check out more about our shows or about Jeremy at soultalkradio.org and jeremymcdonald.net. And now for our show.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for listening to Soul Talk. We have an amazing guest on today. I'm pretty excited about having him on. We've scheduled him a few months ago. He wrote the book, The Gift of Shamanism, and please welcome, everybody, Mr. Itzhak Beery. And I'm sorry, I mispronounced that. It's Itzhak Beery. And so we were just talking about that at the beginning of the show, before the show. He was born in Israel. He is a New York-based practitioner who conducts shamanic healing ceremonies and teaches seminars internationally and co-leads trips to Ecuador and Brazil's Amazon. Itzhak, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great honor.
Thank you so much. I've been doing some research on your work, and it looks like you've started some pretty amazing things, a group that meets in Central Park, and you have that on, seems like a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and then you also have an annual shamanic gathering, healing, where a lot of people come from around the world, which I think is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I started in 1995, and in 2 years later, after I came back from the Amazon, I was so confused, and I needed a weekly practice or daily practice, and so a few of us created the New York Shamanic Circle, which is still going pretty strong, and we have many events, and our core group meet once a week on a Monday evening to do journey work and to build a community. And so we have different shamanic circles. We have healing circles and women's circles, and sometimes we show films. And the idea is to bring shamanism to the biggest city in the world, New York City, to spread the word, to make people connect to nature and spirit.
You know, you say, I watched an interview, and we'll go into your book here in a second. I watched an interview, and you mentioned something I think very profound in a sense that you said. I think it's, you don't agree with the fact that, to be a shaman, that you can't walk into both, two different worlds, like be a business person or have an ordinary, a day job, and then also be spiritual in your shamanic work. And I agree with you. It seems, and you said it really well. You said a shaman needs to stand between two worlds. And and in that group, you have people running companies, and doing other things during the week, and then they come to your
this notion that you have to be a full-time healer or a full-time shaman is a Western concept. Most indigenous shamans that I know of, they all have day job. They either teachers or they grass cutters or builders or gardeners or have their own businesses and restaurants and all of that. So it's you have to work the two worlds, because how can you be empathic to people who come to you with all their daily problems? You really have to understand that, and you have to be ingrained in that experience of other people. You can't say that this is all spiritual work. I mean, the spirituality is really in shamanism is the being in the two worlds and combining them both to make life more balanced. And I think that when you work in your profession and you give of yourself to other people in the community, you can be in both worlds and be more productive and grounded.
Yeah.
It's very important.
I think that's a really good statement, because there's a lot of people out there, practitioners that I hear, and they have to have day jobs to support their homes, their families, and stuff like that. And then I've talked to a lot of them that they're frustrated because they want to be able to do their spiritual work full time, And it seems this is a great statement because it seems that they're exactly where they need to be at that time.
Yes, and, absolutely. So, you can do that work, but you also have to have a grounding experience in reality, in what we call reality here on this plane. You can't just. It's not that you can't. You can, but it will take so much off yourself, and it will take. You would not feel. You need to fill your batteries with energy that is not just the healing energy. And work or doing your day job is a perfect way for that. And I know that there's many people who are very frustrated that they can't do this work solely for doing healing work. But I think that it's a great blessing that to do both of those. And there's no point of having a starving healer not able to pay the bills and not grounded. And then how can you help other people?
I agree. Thank you for putting that out there. I think it's important for us to tell everybody that. Do you think that sometimes that there's a part of them that hasn't become okay with where they're at? There's an old saying that you have to live in the now of the moment. Right now is where you're at this time, and this time is perfect. And,
yes, and I've seen. I have a support group here in New York, and one of the people, the people in the group, is a financial advisor, and he was incredibly frustrated with the fact that he cannot be a full-time shaman, that he have to be going to the office at 9 to 5 and do this boring work, and he was getting frustrated, and he was taking it on his family and and mostly on himself. But I think through the work we've done, he was able to not only become a shamanic practitioner and a teacher, but the work that he's doing during the day, he came to peace with it, and it's actually helping the family to accept that part of himself, that he's a shaman and a healer. He can be both. He could be the provider, and he could be also the spiritual teacher there for the family. I think it's very important.
Thank you for bringing that up. So I was just going to jump into a story I read here, and I find it really interesting that you talk about a story with your sister when you were young, and she was telling you about the camel on the gum that you ate. You were at that point in time, you had decided that you weren't going to let people fool you, and you were, I can't remember how old you were at the time, but it seemed like you were a pretty young boy.
Yes.
And from that point on, you weren't going to let anybody fool you. You were going to be a skeptic or a cynic. And you had mentioned that the shamans and shamanic practice that they called this, I think of soul dying or soul lost. That's what it was.
Yes.
Was this the pinnacle point that kind of shut down or at least turned your perception off of what you saw before or the way you experienced life before? Or how was that?
We are, as young children, as we grow, we encounter so many paranormal experiences or meeting with spirit. Our daydreaming is very developed, and we're kind of naive in a way that is beautiful. We are able to perceive the world in a full way of experiencing the trees are talking to you, the mountains are talking to you. So yes, and as we grow old and people are sensing your naivety, they tease you, they trick you, they want to tell you to grow up and believe in only what you see. And so I think that was a pivotal moment for me, because here is the person that I trust most, and she's tricking me into believing something that it was not true, and, and I believed her, and in wholeheartedly. So I think that moment I decided that I'm not going to let anyone, even the closest people, trick me, or I don't want to be gullible, and that creates separation between me and my experiences. And this book, The Gift of Shamanism, is really about that. It's about telling my stories, or through my stories, to encourage people to be gullible, to be to experience that spirit world talking to them, and not being afraid that they are not adult, that they are taking advantage of, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like that a moment where you're in that trusting and loving state.
Yes.
You open yourself up to a lot of wonderful things, and I think there's a fear in us that we're going to be made fool of, or we're going to look silly, or whatnot. And of course, that fear causes a lot of problems within ourselves.
Yes, and I think mine and the other shamans' belief is that we are all shamans, that we all have these visions, we all have experiences in dreams, in visions, in knowing, in intuition, in deja vus, we all have these experiences, but we're really afraid to talk about it. We're really afraid to go into the person that works in our office and tell them that, listen, I had this dream, or I do a spiritual work, or it's kind of like a little bit of taboos to bring that part of yourself to the office, or to your family, to the community. And I think that's really this book is about, is to encourage people to come out of the closets, to say, I am a spiritual person, I have these experiences. And you'll be surprised, because when you start sharing it with other people say, hey, I have that experience too. And so you start to create some kind of trust and community of people who are not afraid to share those experiences. I think that it's incredibly important especially in our society today, where we are so analytical and so logical, and we want everything to be approved by science. And science by itself, it's a process of discovery. It's not the answer for the rest of life. It's really, as you see now with quantum physics and quantum mechanics, that we're discovering many of the same phenomena that we experience in shamanism. We're starting to understand how that could work, or explained by science today. Yeah.
It's interesting you talk about that, because I've found that a lot of the scientists that I've interviewed or talked to or come into contact, even the ones that are more Newtonian physics, or that kind of stuff, I found that there's an imagination with them. And then because of their imagination, that's what took them to the experiment or the study that they wanted to study, the research they wanted to do. And of course, in the research, they had to do the controlled study and all that kind of stuff and observe it. But I found that the imagination, just the thought that, is this possible? That there was something in them that they got in a dream or whatever, in that dream state, or that shamanic state, and they might not think that that's that, but there's something that took them there to.
There are so many examples of great science who discovered, the great inventions, like Albert Einstein, who you definitely know of him. That he many of his discoveries came to him as a vision, as a communication with spirit, if you want to call that. And I think that the more if you listen to scientists, they can explain how things work, but they don't really know why. And the deeper they go into their research, they do understand that there are forces beyond them that they may not ever experience or know, and they come to a conclusion that there are those what we call the great mystery that help us in our world. So it's just tapping into that. It's a beautiful thing.
It's pretty fascinating. So one of the things I think is interesting is that you have quite a few. Well, your book is about stories of healing experiences or dreams that you've had, and and stuff like that. There's one in particular. Your first week, I think it was in 1997, the first time you were going to go down to Ecuador, and you see during the first 2 weeks before then, you had two dreams before you went down there. And I think that a lot of people that are listening, they've experienced something like that, and maybe they just didn't pay attention to it, or they forgot about it or whatnot. And you even say in the book, remember your dreams, or write, and stuff like that. So what was the? Could you maybe talk about some of your?
I think that when you are committing to an experience like that trip that I took the first time with John Perkins to Ecuador, your mind or your spirit or whatever you want to call a dream is already in many ways is there in that other reality that you're going to experience. So I had this experience that I was dreaming about a meeting with a person in unknown city in South America, and that name was Carlos. And when I came to Ecuador, the person that came to greet us in the airport and took up our tour guide was Juan Carlos, and he asked us to call him Carlos. So I could not. It was very strange experience. And then I had another dream that I was seeing this shaman's house at the edge of the village, and that vision materialized when I came to that shaman's house a few weeks later, and I only could say that maybe my spirit were already traveling to those locations that we were supposed to be going. Now, if I did not pay attention to it, nothing would happen, but I would lose that miracle in many ways of understanding that our dreams are leading us to another reality, to see our own reality, but in a different way. And so there are important dreams, and I'm sure that all the listeners have dreams like that. That we think that they are important, but we don't pay attention to them. We dismiss them. We don't write them down. We think that it was just our imaginations.
Yeah, and I think that it comes back to when you talk about Einstein. I think he even said, imagination is where it happens.
Yes.
And even Carl Jung even said that, that's our, imagery is our last great medicine. Change so much within the imagery.
I think that we cannot. We have this incredible tool we have a receiver and antennas in our mind that we really need to work to increase the frequency so we can, like in a cell phone, if our network is very low, we cannot really hear or receive messages. So the gift of shamanism in many ways is the ability to increase the frequency of your brain to be able to tap into messages that are in the unseen world that relate to our life right here on this planet, on this what we call reality.
You know, there's a story where you talk about your teacher, and I'm trying to remember this, and you're walking down the street with him, and he turns around and said, "Have you started healing?"
Yeah.
And of course, in that comes a flood of old thoughts and doubts and things like that. These doubts, I don't think this is singular to just you or me. I think that everybody out there, some kind of doubts. I mean, I teach a lot of development classes, and I tell them, you know, you're able to do this as well, and they say, oh, no, that's something you can do. And it seems to me that right there is what blocks us to that higher vibration that can bring us into these dreams and messages that allows us what you're talking about.
Yes. When he was telling me that, when he stopped me on the street and said, "Did you start to do healing?" I looked at him as like he came from another world. This was not something that I was very enthusiastic about learning. It fascinated me, that possibility that he can do this kind of work. I thought he's a magician in many ways, but I never really recognized that I have any of that in me. I guess he recognized that, he saw that in me, but every part of my body was rejecting it. You know, I didn't believe that I have that. I didn't think that I'm talented enough for doing that. I rejected the responsibility that comes with it. I didn't see myself as a shamanic practitioner or a psychic or any of the quality that you need to help people. And it's a huge responsibility to work with people and help people and become a community a little bit. It's a very strong responsibility and commitment. And at that time, I was not even. It wasn't something that I wanted to do at all. I was doing advertising. I wanted to be successful. I was a painter. I wanted to do art. So there's a lot of other things that I wanted to do in my life. But I think that there was the great mystery or that guiding force probably was leading me in spite of myself to do this work. And I think that a lot of people probably feel the same way. But I think that once you allow yourself to flow with that energy, things start shifting and magic started to be created.
Well, do you think that you would be it seems to me that you were the perfect candidate to be in that because you were in advertising, you lived in the largest city in the world, and you're kind of like an example of you can be spiritual in the middle of the largest city in the world. You can get to these realms of consciousness in the middle of the largest city in the world, and and still do the work that you were doing, and stuff like that. Do you think that is what makes you? I mean, I'm just asking a hypothetical. Do you think that's what makes you the perfect candidate to do this work? Because of the where
well, I didn't think this way at all. I didn't think this way, and I thought for a long while I thought that people who live in large cities and they are disconnected from nature, they should not be doing this kind of work. They should go out into the forest, into the mountains, to nature, to be more connected, to become shamans. I remember that one day we were visiting Alberto Taza, who is a shaman in Ecuador, and he was talking about the connection to nature and how he works with the fields and grow vegetables and spirit talking to him. And I said to him, Well, it's easy for you to do because you are right here in the Andes where all the spirits are, and you are so connected to the spirit. And he looked at me, and he couldn't understand what I'm talking about. I said, well, we are in the big city. We have big buildings and cars and it's big stores. How can we be connected to spirit? And he said to me, big buildings or any building have spirits too. Cars have spirits too. Don't reject them. You have to work with what you have in your area, in your environment. Everything in the universe has spirit. So it is easier to work when you are surrounded by beautiful trees and rivers in the Amazon. But the most powerful is to bring this work to where you live, to where you don't really need to sell everything and go over to the Amazon to do this work. I think that was a very important lesson to me. I started to when I came back, I was really listening to the birds in the city, to the trees in the city, and to the spirit that emanates from buildings and from the sidewalks and from the stores and from the people going around. There's a lot of that energy that flows in the city too.
Wow. Yeah, I just think those things are so important because there's the world cannot stop. It has to continue to function. We have to have farmers making food, and we have to have people working at the stores and the restaurants and all that other kind of stuff. It's kind of like what you said. A lot of the shamans, are running restaurants, or they're doing yard work, or working farms, those kind of things, and those things never stop. And so, and then the cities. They're it's like I felt a very strong push to stay where I'm at here I live in Florida, and Florida now has passed New York State, the state itself, as far as population just recently. And I'm like, it's interesting in a sense because, there's a lot of commotion that happens around here. That, you can choose to be the stillness within the storm, and I've just felt a really strong pull to stay here. So it seems that that's something that we're bringing a gift to people to say, hey, you can still do this work and enjoy your lives and go into different states of consciousness and do healing work and work.
It's true. It's absolutely true. My teacher had a hat factory. He had a farm that he raised tomato de arbol. He had a Chinese restaurant. I mean, he had many different things that he does in his life. He's not just a yachak, just a healer. He is also a healer, and I think that ability to be a father to the family, to be a head of a community, a farmer, a builder, that helps to give him the full experience and the power that he have when people come for healing.
Absolutely. I just wanted to stop real quick and tell everybody that we're speaking to Itzhak Beery about his book and his work, The Gift of Shamanism, Visionary Power, Ayahuasca Dreams, and Journeys to the Other Realms. His website is in the description below, but it's www.itzhakbeery.com. So I would definitely check out his book and his work. He has quite a few workshops and things that you can find out about him or take his teachings. You can also, there's plenty of things about him on YouTube, so I'm sure you could find something if you wanted to find out more about him as well. So I just kind of wanted to touch on your illustrations in the book, because when you look at these illustrations, I actually, a couple weeks ago, looked at one of them, and just kind of stared into it just for a brief moment, almost like I was scrying with it a little bit, and got lost into it. So, and that was without reading the story that was attached around it. And that's, I think, on page 47 of the book. There's a woman, in white. I think it's a woman, and she's standing. Her feet are on the window of a building.
Yeah.
And I just kind of got lost for a second. So, what were some of the things you were going through when you were writing? With these, obviously, they feel like they were channeled, or they came from your spirit, or the energy around it.
Well, the illustrations are black and white ink illustrations, and it really brought me back to my beginning when I was doing artwork, when I was a painter, and there are kind of illustration of the stories that I was writing about, but it's more the experience of that, and that particular illustration that you were talking about is about a past life experience that I had in the Andes with a shaman, Esteban Tamayos, where I had this incredible experience of myself, of a past life as a woman who was in a sanitarium turned out to be in Vienna in the 1880. Her name was Margaret, and she was taken back to her house after the treatment in the sanitarium, and she jumped from the window and killed herself. And the most amazing experience about that is that that vision was so detailed for the last button on her clothes and for the people around that it really took my breath away. I was in shock. But a few years later, I went to Vienna and I found all the details of that vision that were actually true. The sanitarium, the ambulance, the hospital, the buildings, the clothing of all these people. So I'm not trying to really illustrate all that, but that moment of falling off the window, I try to capture that moment that you're in the air and let yourself disappear into the void. I want to say that this drawing was a tribute to a filmmaker, a documentary person who quite known. He'd done a lot of work, and he was one of my clients, and he had a pancreas cancer. And before he died, he made me promise that I would go back to my old art career and illustrate the book. And how can you say no to a person who is on his way to the other world? So I made this promise, and that really gave me a lot of courage to go back and do these illustrations.
Yeah.
That's the story of the white dragon in the book.
Well, and your book itself came from a psychic a friend of yours telling you that we're going to write the book many, many years ago, and you were like, no, and I think one of your doubts came up as English is not my first language, and all this stuff, and I believe you mentioned to you to write down a story, a page, or just at a time.
Yes.
So this book came over several years, from what I'm understanding.
Yeah, so many years ago, I went to visit. At that time, he wasn't yet my friend, Frank Andrews. He's a very well-known psychic in New York City, and he was looking at the crystal ball and with the cards, and he was saying, "I see pages flying around you." And I said, "What are they?" He said, "Well, you're going to write a book. You're going to write stories." And I said, "Me, stories? Why? I don't know how to write. English is not my language, and all the excuses I could find." But there is something that he said that ignites something in me, and I started to write those stories as they happened because I was such a skeptic, and I didn't want to be taken advantage of, that I wanted to write them, to record them. And slowly over these 10, 12 years, these stories continued to mount, and one thing led to the other, and they were so amazing. And I could not say that they didn't happen, because they actually happened. And each of the stories is about visions that happened to me in the other worlds, but materialize in this world. And that's really what the book is about. And I kind of put it in categories, in dreams and visions and holograms and past life and shape-shifting, all of those experiences that happened to me. And I kind of explain a little bit about each of the categories and how I achieved it. The idea is to teach people, or to show people what they can do, and that to expand their experience, and to give them permission to write them down, to experience that.
So does that's of course one of your suggestions, to write these experiences down, or these dreams down. What are some of the things that you could tell? I mean, obviously it's in the book. You talk about it, but what are some things that they could start doing that would help them, realize? Because I think that part of what you're seeing and showing is that, this happened, in my dreams or my imaginations, or whatever, I had an experience, and then it actually manifested in reality, and so then it took it out of the doubt of imagination and put it into, wow, this is really happening.
Yes, yeah. I think that, first of all, to be open to those experiences and to acknowledge them. In my family, when we wake up in the morning, we share our dreams. And sharing the dreams is a very powerful tool that is used by many indigenous societies, where they wake up in the morning, they sit around, they drink the guayusa tea, or eat breakfast, and they share their dreams. And the dreams tell them how to proceed throughout the day, what they need to know, what they need to work on. They don't have, many of them, they don't have 9-to-5 jobs. They are in the jungle, so they listen to the ancestors. They listen to the spirit to tell them what they need to be doing at that day. So I would start a day like that, with that, and write them down, and then, of course, verify them. I think that one of the things that was most difficult for me is when I had this, let's say, the long-distance viewing, that I was seeing people from afar. I picked up the phone and called them. Most of the time, it was true, exactly the way I've seen it, and sometimes it's not. But the more you verify, the more you let yourself look like a fool, the more you become comfortable with those visions, and you see that they are absolutely true. But there's another thing. You can go into nature. You can hug a tree. You can listen to what the tree tells you. You can close your eyes. You can join a shamanic community or a shamanic drumming circle and do shamanic journeys. That helps a lot in releasing and developing that ability to see. There are some techniques that I'm talking about, like the long distance viewing. You can do that. Do meditations. Meditations in the shamanic sense, that not to dismiss the visions that you see, but to acknowledge them and go with them and let them lead you. So there's many different things you can do to increase that ability to see visions and acknowledge them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So I guess we got about another 20 minutes or so here on the show. I was just I was kind of looking through my my areas I've highlighted in here. But I was just going to, I guess, kind of give you the platform here a little bit and the space here. And is there a story that in here that really just, when I bring this up, really stands out to you in your book, that you feel that would really help the listeners?
They are all my children,
I know there's a lot
so
of
stories in there. There's a story there, like I said, about the white dragon about that came from the documentary filmmaker who was my client. When he was in the hospice and he was basic. They gave him a day or two to be here. I was on my way for 5 weeks in Europe. So I came to do the final ceremony to separate from him, and as I was doing the ceremony, the cleansing ceremony and the healing ceremony for him to help him pass into the other world, his soul, his spirit, came in the shape of the white dragon, and it was a very energetic and unapologetic. And she said that the dragon said that he's not going to leave. I still have a lot to do here, and he's not finished. And I said, well, you can't do that. Everybody's waiting for you to leave. And he says, well, I'm not ready. And I says, for how long? And he says, 6 weeks. And I said, 6 weeks? He was already in there for 2 months, and he was a miracle by itself in the hospice. So I didn't trust myself. I was like, what do you mean 6 weeks? He says 6 weeks. So before I left, I told his wife that I would see them in 6 weeks. And she looked at me like I was totally crazy. Like, what do you mean 6 weeks? And I came back after 5 weeks, and 6 weeks to the day that the soul let me know when it's going to pass. He passed away. But 6 weeks to the day. It was just quite incredible. And there are many stories like that, how spirits from the other side come to give us information, to retrieve object that was left in this world that was not belong to them, that they wanted to give to somebody else. There are stories about it's a beautiful story from Brazil, where a woman asked me to find a gold trove that was left by her family in the Amazon. There's quite a lot of these, but I think that like I said, the thread of all of that is that the spirit of the deceased or ancestors or other spirit are interacting with us nonstop. We're really not alone. We are surrounded by spirits which direct our life, and sometimes a lot of the things that happen to us and we think that it's in our fault is actually the results of intervention from the other side, for good and for bad. You cannot take credit. One of the stories that was quite interesting to me was that after a few years that I was working, the spirit of the Akuras, the evil spirit of the jungle, came with another person that was possessed, and I called. My teacher was there. Ipopiara was at that time was in Brazil in a canoe. So I called his cell phone. And he answered the phone. With him was a Shrey, another shaman. And I explained to him that I saw this incredible evil spirit coming out to attack my client, and I didn't know what I should be doing. And he says, well, these are akuras. I says, what do you mean these are akuras? He says, well, everybody knows what akura is. I said, well, we are working 8 years together, and you never mentioned that. He says, well, now you're ready. So he gave me Shrey, and Ipopiara gave me instructions, and I worked with it. And so since then, I started to work with a lot with the evil spirit and instructions. Well, a few years later, when all that happened, I thought, wow, I'm very special. There's something really special about me. But a few years later, as it turned out, we found out that my great-grandfather was a Kabbalistic rabbi and a healer in Poland. And he devoted his life to the work of the good and evil spirit, the fight between them, which is what I was doing for the last few years. And so everything that I thought that it just was a coincidence, everything that I thought that it was something so special about it, it turned out that I am actually fulfilling my great-grandfather's spirit on this time on this earth. So I think that a lot of us probably doing things that we think that it just happened to us, but it's in many ways we're led into those experiences by our spirit of the ancestors or other spirits that are guiding us.
So there's a story in here that I just I remembered where a woman named Hillary called you and she wanted you to bless a center or some rooms that she was going to be using, and she wanted a Brazilian healer to come in to town and like her center.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and then a few weeks after that, he had come in and done what she'd wanted. She asked you to come back in again because she wanted you to feel the energy in the room and do another blessing. And she had an interesting lesson, obviously.
When I came back at that time, she didn't say a word. She just said, I want you to let me know what happened in that room. And so I was starting to do the cleansing in the room, and all these images started to come of the woman who was sitting by the client, the shaman leaving the room, what they were talking about, and all of that. And it turned out that what she suspected was absolutely true. It was the last time that he came to New York.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But I wanted to say something about the time that we are here at this particular moment in our society that I think that is so important. The gift of shamanism is really, I'm talking about it, that with all this development of digital equipment and iPhones and iPads and computers and all the flat screen that is all around us, I one of the first person to acknowledge that I'm a digital person. I love that. I think it's great, but also it brings us to a time where we don't trust our own senses anymore. I call it the big shutdown of the senses, because everything that we need, all the information that we need, all the community that we want, all the memories, the songs, the teachings, is all come from Google, from the apps on the computer. We don't trust the weather. We have to look at our iPhone to see what the weather will be like. We don't even go outside to smell the air, to see the sky, to see the clouds. We just look at the computer to tell us. We don't remember phone numbers anymore. We don't remember holidays. We don't remember so many different things that we have almost a memory loss And I think that that's the danger, that's what we're experiencing right now, becoming a flat world. And that's why I think that the importance of the developing of the sixth sense, which is the gift of shamanism, is so important, because you have to remember that for millions of years that humans were here on this earth, the thing that kept them alive and it's so important to their survival is the ability for them to vision. Through vision, shaman helps their tribe to find the right game, the right places to go. There's so much information that shamans and other people, when they are connected to spirit, can help them in their own survival, for healing, for the practical side. So I think that the gift of shamanism, and I think that that's why you see it's happening now more and more in the digital the digital society. There are people who are so frustrated by being dependent on these equipment that we know that there is something else, that there is intuition, there is the sixth sense needs to be used. That would make us a real humans. In Shaman Portal, the website that I published, you could see that most of the people who come to this website are people from the New York area, the East, the more advanced center, and the Valley, the Silicon Valley in Los Angeles, in San Francisco. These are people who are day and night busy with digital, but they know that there is something else. There's something more than just flat screen virtual community. We are a community-based animal, and we need that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny that you bring that, because when I first got my very first smartphone, it freaked me out that it told me, because I got an email from my plane itinerary, it would tell me, if you're going to make it to the airport on time, you need to leave at this time, or it would say your flight has been delayed. I'm like, how does my phone know that? And then I realized, because it was emailed into my email, and that's connected to my phone, that, or anybody that's ever emailed me on my email, it puts on my Google Calendar their birthday. And so then I'm like, how do I know what? So,
yeah,
but in a sense.
But in the old time, didn't you remember birthdays? Did you remember phone numbers? Did you remember the meaning of holidays? Now all you have to do is just Google it, and so there's a lot of that part of ourselves is get lost.
And I enjoy that part of technology too, but I also like the connection with people as well. And I enjoy getting out and just like you're talking about with nature. And I have a tree where I walk my dog, and I walk by him every day, and I swear the tree looks like a rabbit. It's got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and when I walk by it, I feel it. You can feel the essence of the tree talking to me. And one day I was actually frustrated, and I grabbed my dog and put his leash on, and I walked by the tree, and I hear relax. And I went back to the tree.
Yes. Well, nature talks to us all the time, and it gives back to us too. It's important, that connection to nature.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just really and thoroughly enjoyed our talk today. There is probably just one last story I want to touch on here is you were invited back to, because I don't think we've mentioned that you're originally not from the United States, you're from Israel.
Yes.
And the town that you were, or the city, or the area you lived in, you even mentioned in here that your upbringing helped you with the work that you're doing today, and or it was a good base, I guess is the way to say it. but you were called back there later on in life to do a workshop, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yes. Yeah.
And, so, I mean,
that was
and
a
you
great
were
honor,
actually, yeah, that is a great honor. And then you were invited to teach, and like I believe, because you mentioned shamanism or shamanic visions for business, and and that they're not business leaders. There are still some business leaders that are not seeing the benefits of this, I guess is the way to say it. How do we flip that? Because I'm finding a lot. I've done a lot of consultant work in business, and I find that where 25 years ago, when I was a professional that first came out, I looked up to a lot of business leaders and saw them as this great person. And now, as a consultant, I'm looking back and I'm saying they really don't see this, do they?
Well, I actually think that they are all great people, because they have what it takes to rise to the place where they are. They have innovative spirit. They are innovators. They are entrepreneurs. They're willing to take risk. They are, and on and on and on. And they have to have vision for where they want to lead our group. So in many ways, I see the work with corporate America, if you wish, as a very important subject for shamanism. And I have many clients who are coming from that corporate world. I think that CEOs and executives are shamans. They are powerful. They see visions. They are responsible for the community. They are in charge of their cultural well-being and the physical well-being of millions of people. What I think that they lack is the ability for them to open their heart, to be connected to nature, to understand that money is not the answer for all. So I think that if we can do that, if we can not dismiss them, but help them understand their larger role in their community, I think that would be a great step forward. And I hope that more of the shamanic work now will go to people who can influence the life of other people, more people in positions of power. That's the only hope that we have to change the world. It's very, very important to do this work with corporate America. And I wanted to tell you a story because it's very important to understand that John Perkins was telling me one day that he was working with the big corporations to help them change their environmental policies. And the CEO and his organization were fighting back and forth. And one time he came over, he invited him to another room and secretly told him, "Listen, I am with you. I want the same thing as you do, but you have to force me to do it." So the shareholders, I would have to go back to the shareholders and tell them that I was forced to do it. And so I think that there are two things here. One of them is that the people are on the top there, they understand the risk and the difficulties that the world is facing, but they also have to answer to the shareholders to make them money. So how do you change the opinions of a shareholder is by creating different public pressure on the shareholders and the corporations. Don't buy.
Yeah.
Be responsible for what you buy. Don't eat the bad meat, the processed food. I mean, you can see now that a lot of corporations now changing the diets of their offerings because people just don't want that anymore. So they follow.
Yeah, changing the trends.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up to about 30 seconds here left on our live show. I really appreciate it. I just want to throw out there again that your website is www.itzhakbeery.com. And I wanted to thank you very much for coming on to talk about your book, The Gift of Shamanism. And everybody check this book out.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It was a real pleasure to share some of my work with you and your audience.
Thank you so much, and many blessings, and I hope we'll have you on the show again someday.
I hope so, too. And my second book is coming up in September, so maybe we can do that again.
Absolutely. So you have a wonderful day, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
You.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.